This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
They got the beat, the campus beat, the campus beat. Yeah, the campus beat.
Yeah, President Trump entering campus politics of sorts with the executive order he promised at CPAC issued yesterday to tie federal grant dollars from agencies like HHS, Department of Education, Department of Defense, to whether or not academic freedom and free speech on campus exists at a particular university seeking those funds. President Trump explaining, surrounded by college kids.
But even as universities have received billions and billions of dollars from taxpayers, many have become increasingly hostile to free speech and to the First Amendment. You see it all the time. You turn on the news and you see things that are horrible. You see people being punched hard in the face. But he didn't go down. He didn't go down. I said, you have a better chin than Muhammad Ali, and he had a better chin. And you see the cowbell scene. You saw that horrible scene. That was a disgraceful thing at a school, at a university. Under the guise of speech codes and safe spaces and trigger warnings, these universities have tried to restrict free thought, impose total conformity, and shut down the voices of great young Americans like those here today. It's great people. All of that change is starting right now. We're dealing with billions and billions and billions of dollars.
That's a great signal, and maybe it's already having an effect at Amherst College. Boston Herald reporting. Politically charged glossary for Amherst College students that disparages capitalism and dictates a broad range of PC gender terms, PC being a synonym for false, has been withdrawn after campus Republicans howled in protest, saying the Orwellian language guide threatened to stifle free speech. It wasn't the college's place to tell us what these things meant, said one of the college Republicans at Amherst. I assume that's like one of the three. Right. They were establishing the parameters of speech. Now, the flip side is you could argue that the unintended consequences of Trump's rather loosely worded executive order potentially present problems in the same order of imposing speech codes on campuses, because you've got what government agencies ostensibly in the business of deciding who is abiding free speech protocols and who is not. So there's some legitimate concerns as well, which is why I wanted to bring in Lee Jussim. He is a professor of social psychology at Rutgers University and was a fellow and consulting scholar at the Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences at Stanford. I don't know what sport he pretended to play to get into Stanford to be a fellow there. We'll ask him. But he issued this statement at Quillette.com, which is a site I keep referring to. You should check out, make that part of your regular reading. My diversity, equity, and inclusion statement, Lee Jussim, and it starts by saying, I'm not afraid of social justice. I'm not afraid of eliminating discrimination. I'm not afraid of dismantling barriers to freedom, opportunity, and dignity. I welcome such dismantling, and I'm not afraid of people who are saying we need all of those things. But he goes on to define some of the words that are bandied about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and see if we can attach some meaning to them for the purposes of advancing the dialogue. And we're pleased to have Lee Jussim on to do just that. Lee, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
So what prompted your diversity, equity, and inclusion statement?
So this is a new development in academia. In the last year or two, or maybe a little predating that, where universities have started requiring these diversity, equity, and inclusion statements as part of applications for professor positions, and also, in some cases, for promotion. And there is a lively debate within academia about whether these are benevolent or essentially device to weed out non-leftist academics from academia. I suspect, everybody is different and every institution is different. It is possible that there will be some places that use it in a benevolent way. You want to know, well, how has some applicant or somebody up for promotion, what have they done to help create a more inclusive university, whether at that prior university or here? But I suspect and would predict that it will in practice be used as a political screening device. And that is what motivated this statement. I made it really super clear in this statement that if what you are about is being inclusive, I am on board. I also made it really clear that people who say they are about inclusion are often about political exclusion.
Right. Well, are there any Republicans that work in your psychology department at Rutgers University?
So people don't wear their politics on their sleeve. So I don't know, I can't answer that. There's, 60, 70 faculty at Rutgers. However, there is so much evidence out there that especially on coastal, kind of high research-oriented and elite universities, that the proportion of Republicans is infinitesimal. So there is a survey that came out within the last year or so of my field, social psychology, what it found was that in 2012, the social psychologists, about 300 social psychologists responded to the survey, voted 75-1 for Obama. Now, I'm not saying that's, I'm not here to advocate whether Obama or Romney. That's not the point at all. That's a personal decision. It's not my place to tell people what their politics should be. But what that does do is give you essentially a probabilistic response to your question, that the odds of there being Republicans at Rutgers is very, very, very low.
Well, right. And so perhaps the more interesting question, because we know the ideological distribution, generally speaking, both administrators as well as the professor had a pretty good handle on that. The question is, are the likes of Jonathan Haidt and Mark Lilla and others that are of the center left or maybe even left but who believe in academic freedom and don't like the totalitarianism that is infecting college campuses, are they making any progress? Are they getting any attention? Are they getting some of your colleagues to rethink their position about what exactly inclusion means and what academic freedom on campus means?
Yeah, well, so I think, the narrow answer to the narrow question, what you asked was, are they having some success? And the answer to that has to be yes. I mean, Heterodox Academy started in fall 2015 with 8 or 9 of us. I was one of the original members. Mm-hmm. And it's in the thousands now. It's approaching somewhere in the vicinity of 3,000. I might be a little bit less, or maybe it keeps growing, so might have surpassed it. That's amazing to me, completely amazing to me, that it would have so many thousands of academics in a few short years. And Haidt himself is very high profile. He's, very successful. He has grant money. People know people in academia, other psychologists, and at this point, psychologists, other social scientists in the humanities. People know of and often end up having to, whether they want to or not, grapple with his ideas and his work. The book that he and Greg Lukianoff just came out with this past year, Coddling, really made a big splash.
Right.
Not everybody agrees with everything in it, but that's fine. That's normal academic process. So some success, yes. Has it succeeded at reducing either sort of threats, sort of internal academic threats to speech and academic freedom? I'm not so sure about that. And has it reduced the continuing sort of drift towards an overwhelmingly left academy? No, I don't think it's done that either.
I wanted to get your help via your academic social justice translator in your piece on some fun phrases because I aspire to be a bit of a wordsmith myself, and so I love interesting phraseology. Vindictive protectiveness. What does vindictive protectiveness mean?
Well, so one of the sort of emergent properties of the left in general, but especially the academic left, is the sort of identification of certain protected groups. And that's going to differ for different people, different contexts. It's not like there is a board of protected groups and they're all the same. But typically they would include racial and ethnic minorities, sexual minorities, religious minorities, most. And if certain days, again, how common, I don't have numbers. But in certain circles at certain times, if they believe that the well-being of either individuals or one or more of these groups are criticized, threatened in some way, and when I say threatened, I don't mean like physically threatened, because that's not acceptable to anybody, but having their values or ideas threatened, it evokes this sort of this vindictive punishment. A person who's, for example, proposes, in some circles, that maybe affirmative action isn't justified, could be ostracized, not because of their political view of affirmative action, but because presumably the only kind of person who would oppose affirmative action is a racist, a white supremacist, and a fascist.
Right. And so how has your statement been received on campus? Are you getting the Samuel Abrams treatment that over at Sarah Lawrence?
No, so I've actually written a little bit about the Sam Abrams thing, and it's completely terrible. And those kind of events emerge intermittently, but they are the tip of an iceberg that's not usually as extreme as what's happened to Sam. So the now answer, again, getting back to what you asked me, I really have not. I've gotten some fairly hostile pushback within narrow circles of, say, psychologists or social psychologists, but I've never gotten the kind of harassment and sort of vilification that Sam Abrams has gotten, that Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine got out in Evergreen, the riots that Charles Murray has been subject to. So somehow, thank goodness, I have not been subject to any of that yet.
All right, well, keep your head on a swivel over there in Rutgers. He is Lee Jussim. He's a professor of social psychology at Rutgers University. His piece in Quillette, My Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Statement, which I'll tweet out, you should check out. Lee, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer.